stillness was unnerving. Not a single leaf rustled, not a bird chirped, and the air seemed to vibrate with an unsettling quietude. The sky, a shade of gray that verged on black, loomed ominously overhead, as if a heavy curtain had been drawn across the horizon. It was as if nature itself had conspired to keep the horrific truth from escaping this place. A truth that lay hidden in the shadows, just out of sight, waiting for its moment to reveal itself. As the solitary figure moved through the forest, each step seemed to echo through the hollows of their soul. Their heart pounded in their chest, their breath coming in ragged gasps, as if they were running from something far more terrifying than what lay ahead. They could feel it, sense it, the presence that lurked just out of reach, taunting them, daring them to come closer. The forest itself seemed to be alive with it, as if every tree, every rock, every blade of grass was tainted by its malevolent essence. The figure reached a clearing, its once lush greenery now trampled and churned into mud. In the center of the clearing stood a massive oak tree, its gnarled branches twisted into macabre shapes, reaching out like claws towards the heavens. Beneath the tree, a makeshift altar had been erected, adorned with candles, offerings, and unholy symbols carved into the wood. It was here that the figure knew they would find what they sought. With trembling hands, they approached the altar, their footsteps slow and deliberate. As they drew closer, they could feel the weight of the presence bearing down upon them, suffocating them with its malevolence. They forced themselves to look up, gazing into the empty sockets of the skull that rested atop the altar. Its jaw was agape, as if in a silent scream that echoed through the ages. The figure knew that they had found what they were looking for, and with a shuddering breath, they reached out and grasped the skull, lifting it from its resting place. As they turned away from the altar, they felt a sense of relief wash over them, as if a great weight had been lifted from their shoulders. But they knew that this was only the beginning, for with the skull now in their possession, they had unwittingly become the vessel through which the ancient evil would be unleashed upon the world. And as they walked back through the forest, towards whatever fate awaited them, they could feel the presence watching them, waiting for the moment when it would strike, when it would consume them and everything they loved. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to lengthen, as if dusk had fallen upon the world without warning. The figure quickened their pace, fear and desperation driving them forward. They knew that they had to reach safety before the evil within the skull could take hold, before it was too late. But as they emerged from the forest, back into the small town where they had lived their entire life, they saw that the world had already changed. The people they loved were no longer themselves, their eyes empty, and their souls consumed by the same darkness that had once resided within the skull. The figure knew then that they had failed, that they had brought this horror upon their town, their family, and themselves. They had unleashed a darkness that could not be contained, and now there was no going back. As they stood there, alone in the gathering twilight, they could feel the presence closing in, drawing nearer with each passing moment, and they knew that soon, very soon, it would claim them as well. They wandered aimlessly through the streets, watching as their neighbors, their friends, their loved ones transformed before their very eyes. The town square, once a place of celebration and joy, was now a scene of desolation and despair. The air was thick with a palpable sense of doom, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling. The figure wondered if anyone else even noticed the change, if they were all already lost to the darkness. As they rounded a corner, they saw a familiar face, the face of someone they had loved once. They reached out to them, desperate for some semblance of human connection, but the figure was repelled as if by an invisible barrier. once loved one looked at them with empty eyes, and for a brief moment they seemed to register some distant memory of who the figure had been. But then the moment